Hello and welcome everyone to this evening's live presentation of Can Demons Do That? And tonight we're going to be talking about a very popular theme, a very popular movie series featuring paranormal investigators. And this is the Conjuring series. And what we're focusing on is the last one, The Devil Made Me Do It. And of course, this has some very close ties to us in this household. Ken, who is deceased, and Deb, who is also deceased, as our friendship has gone back many years. So I'm looking forward to going over this with you. This is a little tribute to Deb. And as we get started, this is Swords of St. Michael Network. I am your host, Farrah, Sister Farrah, and I'm hoping to help you understand demons in the dark side. This is not for the curious, and we're gonna get started about now. Once again, my name is Sister Farrah. That's, my Franciscan profession. I am a lay Franciscan person, and I'd love it if you could give this a thumbs up. If you get anything out of this whatsoever, please share this with someone that you know may be interested, obsessed with horror movies, this type of genre, and you're like, no, this is not a good idea. Please don't do this, because that's what this series is about. This series is about parsing out the information that is out there in the media, in news, in anything from written material to movies, and letting you know what's real and what's not. And it's not a good idea to have that curiosity. So I'd like to put a caveat and a warning before we start. Welcome everybody to chat. Rosalie, Christine, Ann, and Billy, and Athena. Please, if there is anyone listening right now that you know of that has PTSD, trauma issues, personality difficulties, or disorder, please remove them from the room. No small children at all should be listening to this, okay? So if they're here, get them out the room. Also, all images used are licensed to Warner Brothers and remain the property of Warner Brothers. I am only using them to example certain images in the movie and certain demonic elements that were presented. So, as I was telling you, this is a shout out to my sister, Deborah Glatzel Johnson. This movie, The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, although based on the Warrens, is actually, this is a case of Deb's husband, Arnie Cheyenne Johnson. And this is based loosely on an actual historical event that happened in Sherman, Connecticut. So we're going to get going as always. I start with a St. Michael prayer, everyone. In nomine Patri et Filio et Spiritus Sanctus, sic erat in principio et nunc et semper et saecula saeculorum. Sancta Michael Arcangele defende nos in prelio contra nequitium in insidiis diaboli est oppressidium imperare Deo supplicis de pecamur tuque princeps maletia celestis satana maliosque spiritus malignos qui et perditionem animarum pervegantur in mundo divina virtute in infernum detrude. Amen. As I said, welcome. My name is Farrah. I'm your host tonight. We are here at the Swords of St. Michael Network, helping you parse out, can demons really do that? And we are talking about the Conjuring series. And this series is very, shall we say, it's entertainment. It's Hollywood entertainment. Although, yes, I agree, Rosalie, the entertainment level is on par with what we used to have years ago. I don't know if anybody remembers the Halloween series. Anybody remember that? The Halloween series was pretty brutal, pretty violent, pretty in your face, and there was some thematic elements that, children just shouldn't watch. Well, I agree. That's what the Conjuring series is. There are thematic elements that younger minds, under 18, under 21, just would not understand. So it's not my recommendation that you look at these. It's not my recommendation that you become curious and watch this. If you already have seen it, there are going to be spoilers for you that you haven't. So sorry, but I'm going to tell you what the ending is, because we're going to parse out the elements that are demonic and the elements that are purely fictional, made up, and imagination. As we know, a lot of what we see in the media is completely irreverent. It has nothing to do, no basis in fact. So we're going to talk about stepping in to the movie, and the movie leads us right away to a scene in the Glatzel house where we are brought right into the whole reason for the movie is a child. A child that is Deborah Glatzel Johnson's younger brother, David, who was a young boy, who is shown to be cradled by his mother. The Warrens, who this series is about, they're all at a dining room table. So you've got the family around this little boy, including Deborah and Arnie. The Warrens are praying deliverance prayers. And they take a break and say, well, I think everybody needs a break. Now, for one, this is very commonly done in many denominations, including, some Catholics that, participate in some of the charismatic circles and prayers and things like that. What they're showing, though, is they're showing a young boy. This is a deliverance attempt while they're waiting on an actual exorcist, because the family has been tormented with the goings-on of watching this young boy suffer. And what we're looking at is we're seeing that the boy's tired, he's exhausted. Arnie Johnson picks up the little boy from the mother's arms and carries him up the stairs. Arnie, as we can see, is he's a very caring person. Arnie Johnson, as he is presented in this movie, he's totally different. If you look at the actual newspaper clippings, he's completely different from the character. For all intents and purposes, though, this character is empathetic. He knows the child has issues. He carries him to bed, and he says, look, I promise you, nothing is going to happen to you. That is the beginning of the whole hectic thing just completely falling apart. So he takes him up to bed, tucks him in, and as he's walking down the stairs, a cab pulls up to this home. And it was, what was really funny? I have to say this because I'm a cinematic nut. I love, and I've also been an actress. I've been on screen. I've been on stage and indie movies. It was almost as if you were watching the original Exorcist. The cab pulls up, the exorcist pulls out in his hat, and then there's the mist and the dark house. And it was like, wow, that looks familiar. This is when the activity begins, which is kind of different. The exorcist gets up to the house, and as he goes to bang on the house, they show the little boy, not Arnie as pictured here, but they show the little boy, and the little boy jumps out of his bed, because this is one of those jump frights where you're hearing this bam, 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 and the little boy is just freaked out. He's jumping and he's running down the hall. He goes into the bathroom, and he's beside himself. He doesn't know what to do. He's freaked out. And of course, we don't see the exorcist coming in or anything like that. But, this little boy is just so frightened. So he's hopping in this huge, there's this clawfoot tub, and these are the curtains all the way around him. And what's really interesting about this is that what you're looking at just this little child, afraid, and he's looking up and he sees these little fingers come over, get those, what is it though, the rails that the curtain hangs. Okay, that's bad enough. All right. Then what we have is the faucet lets out and blood is gushing everywhere. So he's screaming, he's shrieking, he's jumping out. Then all of a sudden, all the adults hear him and they're rushing up the stairs to come and grab him, because they're thinking something's after him. We've got to come get the kid. This is not good. He's huddled in a corner. The father is the first one, Mr. Glatzel, in the door. David, who's in a ball in the corner, he's no longer He's soaking wet. He comes out and lunges at his father. All of a sudden, he's got a knife and he has stabbed his father in the leg, which I'm going to stop it right there because, I want to cover some of this stuff real quick because you've got the knocks, the 3 loud knocks. You have, the little child running and he's seeing things creep. He's seeing the water turn into blood, that sort of thing. I have to let you know that some of these things are exaggerated, some of them aren't. You do not have to be going through a possession to experience loud knocks. You don't have to be possessed to see your water turned into what looks like blood. You don't have to be possessed. You can be obsessed to see a hand come over the rail and it completely throw you out of your reality and scare you to pieces. Those things can happen if you've been oppressed, all right? The little boy taking that knife and gouging his dad just right in the thigh. The boy was scared. He believed that there was a beast. It doesn't show what David saw. It doesn't show exactly what he was looking at. We just know that he lunged as soon as he got out there because he was frightened. So this is when all of a sudden, he can't carry him any longer. So Mr. Warren steps in, the 2 investigators, 2 paranormal investigators, Mr. Warren and Mrs. Warren. He grabs the boy from the father and he's carrying him down the stairs because they know they just let in the exorcist downstairs. So the exorcist is down there putting on his stole, getting ready. Mrs. Warren is just dumping the flowers on the ground. Everything's off the dining room table. They're going to slap him down just like a pig at slaughter and just open him up and take it out right then and there. That's what I thought. I'm sorry. Some of it was just a bit much. So poor David, writhing, screaming, stuff coming out of his mouth. This was a scene where he was completely under the possession of this entity or this demon. So this is what we are led to believe, that the exorcism has been allowed and this priest is about to perform the exorcism. So as he was being carried down by Ed Warren, this little boy is grabbing onto the wall. Oh, thank you so much, Ed. Thank you. God bless you. I have to thank, all of you for coming, Ellen, Melanie, Athena, Billy, and I'm just having to give you guys a big shout out. Thank you for the support. I appreciate it so much. But we're talking about this child being dragged down, 3 long scratches where the boy is grabbing the wall. No, that doesn't happen. No, that doesn't happen. No, that doesn't happen. A demon does not come through a child like that and leave those scratches where people are grabbing him. It's usually a little bit more subtle than that. And could it happen? More than likely. Thank you, dear. But not very likely when somebody is carrying them. It's more likely that the child would scratch the human and then the human would get 3 scratches and you'd be like, I thought I felt the whole hand. Not on the wall so much. So that was interesting. The priest has draped his stole over him, and little David is laying there just, oh, thank you, Anne. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for supporting the channel, you guys. This is really starting to get ugly because you have all these adults surrounding this little tiny child that must be maybe 50 or 70 pounds soaking wet. And he's writhing and kicking and screaming and cursing and, just making all these guttural sounds. And the priest is praying in English, all right? And he's praying the prayers of deliverance. What was curious about this scene is we also have Mr. and Mrs. Warren. They're sitting there praying their own prayers of deliverance in English. Debbie's crying. Arnie is holding on to this little boy on the table on one hand. And this is where you're wondering what's happening, all right? And all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, Lorraine Warren, the wife, of the late the paranormal people, is holding David's hand, and she gets this vision of this altar. And this is one of those things that is not recommended, very scary, very dangerous, and I don't recommend anybody attempt to see any kind of bilocation or anything else. These kind of gifts are very, very, very dangerous, and they're not to be talked about. The gift that this woman apparently had in the movie was to see an altar where there was a spell being cast intentionally. So she's in shock. She pulls away. So she's not holding this little baby anymore, this little boy, this little David anymore. So her husband is worried and says, "What's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong?" As soon as she starts holding her head in pain and steps back, the cabinet's open. Everything's flying out of the cabinets. I'm telling you, this isn't a dining room. So the kid's on the thing. The plates are flying out. Priest gets knocked out. Everybody's ducking, the plates are flying, and the boy is just frothing at the mouth. And all of a sudden, Ed goes to see, because Debbie had fallen backwards, went over to see what was going on. And then David, little boy, frothing at the mouth, jumps on top of Mr. Warren, grabs him by the clutches and says, "I'm going to stop your heart, old man." Let's just take some of these things. The exorcism, the prayers of deliverance, etc., etc. Is this live or is this Memorex? Now, prayers of deliverance are limited to, we may pray for someone else. Or in other words, I may pray for someone else, but as far as commanding the actual demons in someone else, we have no authority unless God gives you that authority, a bishop gives you that authority. It's very dangerous because you can really incur just a horrible wrath on yourself, curse your family, etc., etc. So the paranormals that were there, these investigators doing those deliverance prayers, who knows if they had authority or not. That's not something anyone should ever do. Ever, ever, ever. So I have to tell you that is not the norm. The norm for a priest showing up and doing an exorcism in somebody's house, rare to none. Exorcisms occur on holy ground. Exorcisms occur with full knowledge of the person receiving the prayers. It's very rare, and it's very highly unusual for these prayers, these solemn prayers, to be done anywhere except in a church, in a convent, on holy ground. It's very rare. It would only be done in emergency situations, and those prayers would be prayers of a specific blessing for the home. Okay? So they had to stretch it here. And, just out of deference and respect to what's going on in the chat, I just wanted to let you know that, yes, cabinets in exorcisms, from personal experience, you don't have to have an exorcism, and you don't have to be in a possessed house to have cabinets open and stuff fly out. It happens in poltergeist cases and some haunted houses. It just does. And all exorcisms do not have things flying. Sometimes things appear. So there was no plate on the table, and the priest is praying, and a plate appears. You have to ignore it. You have to ignore it or pray it away. And yes, there is a lot of stuff very different here. Hi, Deb. So let's go over it. We've got Lorraine Warren, one of the paranormal investigators, getting a vision of a bull. Does that happen very often? Rarely. What the church calls someone that, like Padre Pio, that can bilocate, someone that has a gift of, I call it a tear in time. As Pio would describe it, it's a form of mysticism that no one openly talks about. And the mystic will not talk about it except with her spiritual director or the permission of her ordinary or spiritual director, because this is not something that this isn't encouraged because these sort of things, visions are given very, very frequently, and our world is ruled by the prince of the air, all right? And he is totally capable of rearranging those molecules in front of our eyes at any time. And this is why I asked you at the beginning, if there's children, there's anybody with PTSD, there are triggers here among the reality and among the delusion. So when we look at this timeline of events for The Devil Made Me Do It, in this case, this exorcism would not have normally been performed in the home. Not unless the bishop gave the permission and there was not a rectory or a chancery someplace close that they could do this. Because the home is not consecrated holy ground. That's what we're looking at, everyone. It's not consecrated. So, priest, still laying there. Arnie sees that, for whatever reason, Ed Warren has this kid screaming at him. He's going to stop his heart. Does that happen in exorcisms? Not always. It can. And usually it happens when people step out of line and they speak to the voice that is coming out of a possessed person, which I learned the hard way, you do not do. You never, never, never even acknowledge that it's there. That is only for the priest. And in stepping out of line, I've explained before on numerous occasions, and I'm going to tell everyone new, and welcome to my new viewers. The devil's a legalist. He will not go where he's not welcome. He will not go where he is not openly allowed to. So if you pay attention and give him any kind of leeway, he's going to jump right in, and he's going to tell you the drugs you've done, the sins you've committed, the crimes, and he's going to throw them at you in front of everyone, and he's going to laugh at you. Which, we had a threat to stop his heart. Like I said, does that happen? Yes, it does. Not very often, because usually only people that have been highly trained, that are very seriously devout, religious, fasted, prayed, they have a focus on what to do, what not to do, are going to be allowed with a priest to go through this sort of ritual and back them up by praying, prayers, litany of the saints, that sort of things, prayers that pray for the person but do not address the demon. So this is just one of those kind of gray areas that it's kind of hard to understand. It's great for Hollywood movies. It's absolutely exciting to watch, but not a lot of reality here. So this is where it gets hairy, and this is where we were looking at what just was about to transfer. So Arnie pulls David off of Mr. Warren. The boy had gone into convulsions, and he was looking like he was not bilocated, but he was just literally he was dislocating his shoulders and everything else. Debbie is crying and screaming, "Somebody help David, somebody help David, somebody help David." So Arnie got right in his face, and he's like, "Get out, leave this boy alone." And Debbie is crying, the mother, Judy, and everybody else, people are shattered and laying on the ground, and they're not paying attention to this little boy, David, except Arnie. And that was the focus of the movie, was Arnie. So here's where we see that Arnie, which was in the basis of the specific legal right that Arnie gave to this entity, he said, "You stop this. Leave this little boy alone. Leave this little bone. Take me." And he just shook this kid and he says, "Take me. Don't pick on him." That's from the book. That part is true. Arnie did this. The little boy, he shook. His eyes went all completely black. And then what happened? Cheyenne's eyes got the black lines, and then all of a sudden, both of them went back to normal. And this is the demonic delusion that occurs and that can occur at any time, and it doesn't have to just be a possession. This can be an obsession. These sort of things can occur if somebody's obsessed and they're out in public, like let's say they're at a wedding reception or something. You could look at somebody and all of a sudden their eyes go completely black and it looks like they've got these huge shadows, and you look away, it's like, did I see that? And then they look normal. It's not a delusion, it's a demonic perception. For whatever reason you're allowed to see that, I'd steer clear of them. Just my own personal opinion. Some people can pray it away and say, oh, it's not a big deal. So we know Arnie has gone, hey, right in his face. So after that, things kind of settle down. The priest has to, like get with things, and he's organizing people. And Ed Warren, because his heart had gotten so bad. Exactly, Athena. He did give that demon legal rights. Welcome, Julia. Thank you so much for coming. I just wanted to make sure I told everybody hi for being here. And it's kind of crazy when you're doing it live. So Arnie is going about things normally. He is acting as if, nothing's wrong. David seems to be completely okay. David is working on the house, which is owned by his girlfriend, Debbie's boss, Bruno. He is up in a tree. He's trimming tree limbs. And all of a sudden, this chainsaw starts shaking in his hand. It jumps out of his hand and it lands on the ground, digging into the ground. And people are like, what are you doing? And this is when you see this figure in the window watching over him. Hi, good to see you, Nina. This was something that was our first indicator that all was not right in this movie with Arnie, whatever he did. We did not know. It was made obvious by this figure in the window. So he doesn't know what's going on. He is absolutely, I kind of want to call it like he was in a fugue state, because his eyes don't look right. Nothing about his demeanor is right. And this happens a lot at the beginning of possession cases, that people will lose senses of time. They will not feel themselves. They will actually look like they're sweating when they're not. And they'll just shake themselves back to reality because they don't really understand that they may have a step in possession, or something else may be going on. So this is what was going on here, is that he's starting to realize that he doesn't feel that good. So, demonic? Possibly. Figure in the window? Definitely black. Is it demonic? It could be a ghost. We don't know. But yes, this happens very frequently. So the next scene is going to catch Debbie Glatzel, Arnie, Cheyenne Johnson. He is asked by Debbie's boss, Bruno, to actually, could you please repair there was a radio that was broken. And Arnie, helping Debbie out, because Debbie worked there at the kennel, said, sure, I'll repair your radio, no problem. We are going over to Debbie's house for a picnic, a family gathering. So this was Bruno showing the setup between Arnie and Bruno. Bruno was drinking like he normally does. Bruno was he loved to drink. He was drunk. Arnie supported Debbie. Sure, I'll repair it for you. They go over to her house. And this is where the step-in possession starts coming out. Yes, just to answer a question from chat so I don't lose it in the telling of this. Yes, it's basically, I call it the cockroaches. Some people call it malevolence, that actually can harass you in your dreams. They can actually harass your emotions. They can harass your moods. And they're, what I call them, they're the smaller minions that just kind of gang pile on top of you to make you feel miserable, make you feel depressed, to make you disorient you, create chaos. Back to the movie. Bruno was a drunk. Arnie and Debbie were at the Glatzel house having a fabulous time, having a picnic. Everybody's outside. Arnie goes inside the house. He's getting something. And in the kitchen, as he's going out, he sees a box of cereal pop off the shelf, and the cereal flies everywhere. And he's like, there's nobody around. Who knocked that off? So he walks over and he sees a hole in the wall. Now, this is a really ugly black hole. If you've ever seen like what is like a wasp mound, where it's like the mud dauber mound, that's what it looked like in the wall. It was really kind of strange looking. So he's looking in this hole. Now, how many of you or I would look into a big black hole? You know, no, I get a flashlight. I'm not looking at that thing. But, and this is where, you know, the movie, a lot of this is Hollywood. A lot of this is for, you know, everybody just to go, oh my gosh. He looks in the hole, turns around, and that figure we just saw in the window of that really dark looking woman grabs him all of a sudden. Okay, there's our jump scare. And all of a sudden gets right in Arnie's face. Arnie just sinks right into the wall. Does that happen? You know, I've actually had a couple of cases where people have told me that they felt as if they walked into something, that they didn't know why it felt that way, but they just felt like they were getting very weak, and they walked into something that just completely embraced them, and they don't remember what happened for an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours after that. That was the last thing they remember, and they didn't know why. And this is very, very common for people that have step-in possessions, that are on their way to possession, that are in the last stages, that are in a oppression, obsession. So Arnie was about, you know, to experience the full-on step in. Now, they go back, Arnie and Debbie go back to Bruno's house. It shows Arnie fixing a table. Bruno is drunk again. They don't ever show this man sober. The stereo is being cranked up very loud, and Arnie, being the nice guy he is just trying to focus. You see Arnie stepping into that fugue stage, and it was important for me to talk about this because they showed it over and over in the movie, how his eyes would just totally blank out, and he'd be sweating, and he just didn't even look like he was there. It's just like he checked out. The movie presented it as there was no sound. He was not able to interact with those around him. And that is also something that I've heard that's very, very common, that they feel like they're underwater. Everybody is around them, but it's like slow motion. And this is true. This is very, very common among oppressed and people that are struggling with some kind of low level. What is a fugue state? Is almost like a schizotypical. It is like a dislocated. It's like where your mind is back here, and your attention span is back here, but everything looks like you're there, but you've stepped back. So a fugue state is disoriented. Almost like a schizotypical disassociation state. In this instance, Bruno's drunk. He wants to dance. So he grabs Arnie, and Arnie's like, I don't want to dance with you. And Arnie is jumping up and down, or not Arnie, but Bruno's jumping up and down trying to dance with him. Debbie walks in the room from the kennels, because this is attached to the kennel. This big building, kennel, Bruno, Debbie lives upstairs, with Arnie Cheyenne Johnson. Bruno sees Debbie. Debbie's, you've got to lay down. You've got to lay down. We know from the way she's handling this situation with her drunk boss that he's done this before, and it's been her past job to get him to relax. He grabs Debbie and starts dancing with her. She doesn't want to dance with him. She's like, no, she can't push him off because he's drunk, he's big. Arnie is up against a wall looking like he doesn't even know he's there. But he's seeing Debbie trying to push him off. So something is registering that I got to get this guy off, or what's wrong? And he can't figure out why he's not able to move faster, why he's not able just to jump right in that situation. However, when Bruno tries to bend Debbie over as they're dancing and they almost fall, she shrieks, snapping him out. And Arnie, this is the interesting part of this whole scene. There's so much here. So I apologize if I'm going on a bit. Bruno morphs into something. Exactly. Thank you, Edgar. Exactly. You're temporary, withdrawn, and disconnected. It is like a schizophrenic kind of split. It's only temporary, and it's not, actual schizophrenia. Thank you for clearing that up. In this instance, Bruno, his hands become a creature's. Arnie sees him as a creature, jumps in, grabs Deb, and heads down the kennel. Where this is where things get very, shall we say, completely schizophrenic, totally disconnected. Arnie pushes Debbie forward through these kennel halls so she can run. Arnie hears something behind them like a beast. Lights go red, everything goes red, gets dark. He looks down the hall to where Bruno would be coming, and Bruno is on all fours, and he's transformed into that beast. And he's coming after Arnie and Debbie. Debbie's screaming, come on, Shy, come on. No. And then for whatever reason, we see Arnie stabbing the beast. And then it cuts out. This is the crux of the actual movie. That moment when we see that Arnie is walking down the road. Okay? Because Arnie had no memory. He was just, shall we say, he was absolutely, I used the word fugue earlier for a fugue state. He had completely lost any timing, any knowledge that he was even there. The last thing he could remember was having a couple sips of beer with Bruno. He remembered nothing. Now, this is very, very common in certain mental illness, personality cases where someone, for whatever reason, if they have a severe enough PTSD, that will trigger them to forget everything and all of a sudden defend themselves no matter what. It's pretty rare. It does happen, and it does not mean that somebody is possessed in any way, shape, or form. However, in this case, there was enough evidence to believe that it was not only not Arnie, okay? It wasn't Arnie. And Debbie was right there. She saw what Arnie looked like. She saw that, Bruno was drunk. Yes, they believe Anne, he was possessed at that point. Yes. And Juliana, there are many personality disorders which, depending on the comorbidity of the psychopathology, the Machiavellianism, narcissism, and psychotic or psychosis, depending on those personality disorders, something like this could happen, and they could basically put a block up and not remember it. That is very, very possible. That's why we can never throw the baby out with the bathwater. We can't assume that there wasn't something mentally here. We can't assume that it was demonic. However, as I said, from personally knowing these people and then looking at this movie, which these are two different things. This is a Hollywood movie. the actual truth of what happened with The Devil Made Me Do It. We're going to be talking about the movie and the real people that I know in the future. So in this movie, Arnie has no memory. Arnie is found walking alongside the road, and this is what was very, very, very strange, is that we have a murder. And the movie shows the murder weapon. There's not too many people know. I don't know, Tony, if the movie with Arnie was taken down or not, but I do know that there were numerous interviews with Arnie, with Debbie, and I think because Arnie was convicted, they may have taken it down. I'm not sure. I couldn't be 100% positive. So Arnie's found. He's walking. This boy has got blood all over him. He's walking down the road. Everybody's been looking for him all night. Nobody knew where he went. The police had to be called. The body was carried off. And the next morning, he's walking down the road with blood all over him. So the officer comes up to me and says, "Are you okay?" And he says, "I think I may have hurt someone." This is the beginning. So I want to take a question from chat really quick, because this man is very intelligent. He does a lot of good work for people. He wants to know, is it possible with people with dissociative identity disorder to do things in one identity that they do not remember in their main identity? 100%, 1,000% right. I've dealt with so many people that are in satanic cults, in alternative living style cults, in religious cults, that, okay, and what they're known as in their dissociative identity disorder. This was often known as, the Sybil case of multiple personalities. What it is that our mind, in becoming fractured, like, let's say there's like 4 of me, the mind fractures at the time of the trauma. And you can see this in narcissists. You can see this, with narcissistic personality disorder. You can see this in psychopaths. All you have to do is talk and listen to them for a little bit. So what happens is, in this part, let's say the first trauma occurs when I am 4 years old and I'm raped. That part disassociates and protects itself and will come out occasionally, maybe as an adult. I don't want to have an intimate relationship. It may come out in a sense, maybe maybe I'm going through hypnosis and I don't want to relive something, so that little child will come out and go, So the second part of me, all right, just to give you an idea of a dissociative identity disorder, the second part might be 7 years old, when I witnessed my father take my cat and break its neck in front of me and toss it in my lap and say, "That's what you get for smart now." And all of a sudden, that part just shuts down, locks up, and that person, whether it's anger or rage or hate, whatever emotion that's locked in that part, will come out and can hurt someone, can do something very evil or ugly that the other 2 or 3 or 4 parts will cover up. And they don't even know what happened, because these parts are all separate. The difficult thing is recognizing these parts and helping these parts understand, not be afraid to share the joint protective custody, because they all want to protect the main personality, and then integrate them so that they can practice on a daily basis sharing that integration. It's a long road. It's a seriously long road, but it can be done. So yes, the answer to it, and I'm sorry for the segue, everyone, but it does have a lot to do with this movie. So the one identity can completely hide everything malignant or evil from the other dissociative identity parts perfectly. And there's lots of instances. I've seen them. I know a couple people that deal with this on a regular basis. It's really, really sad but it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing what the mind can do to protect us from complete annihilation. That's what's incredibly amazing about this. So Arnie's arrested. He's in jail. He's being talked to. And all of a sudden, guess who's there? The paranormal investigators to the rescue. And yes, exactly. Altars, the parts are developed so that they don't have to deal with the reality of what happened to him. Exactly, Edgar. So we have the paranormal investigator sitting at this table, this scene now with Arnie. Okay, we're kind of up to par because he's in jail. They're having him read from a Bible. Okay? Psalms or something like that. And we all know if you can read from a Bible, you're not possessed. And that's what they proclaim. Arnie's not possessed. He can read from a Bible. And the priest is there, and Ed's there, Lorraine's there. And he says, well, I don't remember doing it. Debbie is sitting there saying, he doesn't know what he did. That wasn't him. So they are convinced that there's no way he could have done this. There just isn't. They're wondering, though, how is it that he took on this entity, but he's not currently possessed? So they go outside of themselves to look for a case. Now, let's just parse that out real quick. Can demons do this? All right, yes, demons can do this. Yes, demons can do a step in possession. We talked about legal right earlier. Can demons do a step in and not come back? Ken used to always call it the prime directive, and I love that. Because, in a sense, I agree with Ken, and in another sense, I don't agree with him. Because, yes, excuse me, pollen and stuff in the air. When you have a step-in may be the completion of a set directive of a destructive act or a chaotic event that needs to ensue. However, because there is another weaker link to possess and chase, and it would not be good for that demon to enter or attempt to enter that body, the demon will go and play with someone else. Truth. Happens all the time. So Arnie is basically at the mercy of a lawyer and the Warrens, convincing him that the devil did make him do it. And this is the hard part, because where this movie is going is they're trying to find a reason why David was possessed and Arnie committed a murder he does not remember. Because this is difficult. It's never been done before. And it was just jaw-dropping that some would go into court and say, oh, by the way, devil made me do it. And actually think that somebody could really do this. Claim there's a demon in them and actually convince a jury in a court of law. That's what they were set to do. So the Warrens got some of their researchers. They went and they thought, what could be in that house? So they went back to the house. And this is where we go back to what happened when the Glatzels moved into that house. This is what they had to uncover, because the Warrens, didn't have any grounding to look for why this was happening, what was going on. So what they did, they went and they talked to everybody in the house and said, he must have been cursed. They show Ed and Lorraine. Basically crawling under the crawl space. You know how when there's too much moisture, there's crawl space? They crawl under there. Ed is going around with his cane because he's still not feeling good. And for whatever reason, Lorraine goes down there. What are they looking for? Well, they're trying to actually confirm that there's something going on with the house that has actually caused David to be possessed, Arnie to be oppressed, and it's just really strange. So Lorraine is scared by rats and that sort of thing underneath the house. Now, thank you for asking, did the Warrens really do that in real life? All right. we're going to talk about what the Warrens really did in real life in the real Devil Made Me Do It interview. And for all intents and purposes for this movie, as far as I know, the Warrens did not go underneath the house. The Warrens did, as in the movie, they set up their cameras. They heard about the case and they offered to help. They set up cameras. They got another investigator involved, and they wanted to see if they could help the family get rid of whatever was bothering David. So they kind of came in, I think it was like after the first exorcism, and because David had many exorcisms. Like I said, we'll talk about the actual things. Let's stick with the movie here because I get so easily sidetracked. Thank you for the questions. And Ann, you are a moderator. You can kick anybody out you want. Okay, Ann? Rock it and sock it away. The point of her crawling under the house was to look for what? We were looking for some reason that it was cursed. What had happened is we had the Glatzels moving into the home, and that was the before. When they moved into the home, there was a waterbed there. And this waterbed was full of water. Who leaves a house with a full waterbed? And then we have this little boy who's playing, and this is David Glatzel, young David Glatzel, bouncing on the waterbed. I mean, I don't know if anybody can remember being around waterbeds for the first time and you're bouncing up and down on it and you're enjoying it. And you're like, this is the coolest thing. Well, as he's staring into the waterbed, he sees a face, jumps back. Here's the jump scare. And something comes out of the waterbed. It just grabs him and tries to suck him under the water. And he's telling everybody, because he's screaming. Everybody's running in the room. And he's like, Nobody believes this kid. This is where the Warrens step in and they're like, okay, so something grabbed him. You guys didn't believe him. So like automatically they're diving under the house of where this waterbed was. Okay. So what's happened? Lorraine uncovers, and I'm not going to let you guys actually see the image because I don't want anybody thinking that I'm sorry about that. I apologize, Deborah. What happened is they had to find something in the movie to tie this, so they made it a curse. Lorraine finds this ball of skull-like thing wrapped in cloth just kind of sitting there. Like, if I set this glass of water underneath the house and I put a little fabric under it, I'm like, okay. And Rosalie, I know this is why you were laughing because you know him and I know him. However, this totem was supposed to be a satanic witch's totem that cursed the family. So this is where the movie is segueing off into the reason that the devil made me do it. Now, let's look at this, all right, from the standpoint of the origin, the truth, and the, shall we say, the exaggeration. When the Warrens were looking at the recordings of what happened during the exorcism and looking for the origin, they couldn't pinpoint anything other than this waterbed as being the source. So with the waterbed being the source, they discovered the totem, and they think that they've got it. It's a curse. So they need to find out, if it's a totem, what brand of witchcraft, what brand of Satanism. I agree. Thank goodness. Waterbeds, you can't do anything on a waterbed. They're not comfortable or nothing else. I hate waterbeds. Thank you. Let's shoot all the waterbeds and drain them, okay, you guys? Nobody likes waterbeds. I mean, some people might, but I prefer to float on the lake. This is what we've got. Some kind of skull totem. So Ed and Lorraine, they go home and they figure out that they've got to look up this skull. They've got to figure out what it is, where it came from. So Ed and her are looking through all of their books and stuff, and they come up with that it must be a witch totem, okay? So what kind of witch totem is it? Well, their researcher find something. Is this possible? Is this possible that a witch totem is actually the cause of a curse? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Is it possible that it's going to be sitting right there where you can find it? No. No, 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 no. Not very likely. When cults, when ritual members, when witches want to curse somebody, they usually find places to bury them. They usually find wall boards. They usually bury them within so many feet of a foundation. They will rip a small, tiny hole, like, see my collar right here? They might rip a small, tiny hole and stick something in there, like a piece of wood, something that's cursed, that you don't even know you're carrying around. They might slip something in your purse. And there's a lot of people that say, well, don't you have to believe in a curse for it to happen? I says, if we're talking truth and reality, all right, what we're looking at is we're looking at evil. We all know what the end of the story is. I'm going to remind you again. All right? You have nothing to worry about. I have nothing to worry about. We can laugh at this stuff. However, there are many people that have either invited something in, have looked into the occult, have dabbled into it, and given a certain amount of mischievous cockroach demons access to play with them. So a curse could take hold. So in that sense, this is very possible, and it is very probable that this could have happened. All right? So from that angle, I want to address something real quick for everyone, whether you're Christian, you're not Christian, Hindu, Muslim, Buddhist, Jewish, or whatever faith you are, or non-faith. Billy brings a great question to light, and this applies to everybody. As we go through these series, can the demons really do that? If you're a good Catholic, you don't have to worry about being cursed. If you're a good Jew, you don't have to be worried about being cursed. If you're a good Hindu, you don't have to worry about being cursed. If you're good, you don't have to be. Yes and no. Yes, you have nothing to worry about, because our faith is a muscle that, when exercised regularly through prayer and devotion to the one true living God, Jesus Christ, you have nothing to worry about. No, you don't worry about being cursed at all. You just don't worry about it. However, sometimes we all go through times when, our finances are difficult, when we're fighting illness. And, I'm going to ask you at the end, everyone that's listening, to please pray for a family. I'm just going to give you a first name. Lori and her family are fighting COVID. If you could pray for them tonight, I'd appreciate it. And it's difficult when, like, the whole family members, all of a sudden everybody's sick. Or how about 2 people in the house lose their jobs? That is really difficult. I mean, how do we look at this and say, well, I'm a faithful, I'm a loving, I'm a good person. How does this happen? How does a good and loving God, all of a sudden, how do they look at God and go, okay, why is this happening to me? That is really, really, that's between you and God. God allows everything to occur to us in order to draw us closer to him. So don't ever worry about that. So back to the movie, okay? Thanks for the question. That's really, really good to parse out. So we're looking at Ed and Lorraine. They're looking for this skull thing in one of the private library books. Well, they can't really find it. They know that there's a priest that is a expert. Well, if you're glad to know about other faiths being protected too, Billy, what it is about other faiths being protected, that God gives each one of us a certain amount of faith, a certain amount of grace, and we are all born Thank you, Anne. We're all born with that divine spark in us, whether we are born Native American, whether we are born Jewish, whether we are born into a Hindu family. We all have that divine spark. And this is why, as a good Catholic or a good Protestant or a good Baptist or a good Episcopalian, you don't look at your Christian brother or your Hindu brother and say, well, you're probably cursed because you're just that stupid for not loving the real God. No, that is not for us to say. It is for us to be the light of Christ to that person when and if they are ready on their path to God, that they may need the light that we already carry that is waiting to be woken up in them. So don't think that our brothers and sisters are not protected by that divine spark and that grace that God originally gave them. Okay? Just putting it out there. We are to release the truth. Not stab people, kill people, beat them over the head with it, okay? And yes, other faiths may be protected by the gracious God that we all have. So, well, it is. Of course it is, because God loves all of us. He doesn't just go look at, you're a Native American and you don't know anything about me, so I don't like you. No, that is not God. God loves you exactly where you are on the path. That's why he got all these disciples going, hey, go grab those guys and grab those guys. He didn't say, you got to be baptized right away. You got to believe in Jesus right away. No, he said, go and tell them the good news. That if you turn away from what you do and you take a step into obedience by being born again of what you were and look forward to me by being baptized, you're it. You're in it. You're in it to win it. But don't think that God's not going to love you right where you're at on the path. All right? Not for 1 minute. All right? I'm here to tell you. He does. So I got to get back to the movie. All right? Movie time. Ed and Lorraine, they've got the motions going with a researcher, priest. This priest has been spending 9 years studying the occult. And this is where it's really starting to get kind of crazy, because they want to find this skull totem and they want to find out what it is. Nobody has any clue. Now, they get a call from the jail. Arnie's under suicide watch. For whatever reason, when they found that totem, Arnie went under and saw something crawling under the bed, like the thing that attacked his beautiful Debbie. He freaked out, lost it. They've got him in isolation. The Warrens go to the police officers that have dealt with this sort of satanic cult before. And basically, what we look at, exactly, Athena, you're 1,000% right. 1,000% right. They need help. And the cops have dealt with these sort of satanic cases, and that is true in some areas. And I know sheriffs here, and they are familiar with some of the totems and the satanic ritual stuff that they use. And the one they showed in the movie, thank God, never seen that one before. It was different. It was more, shall we say, it was more for the Hollywood moment than anything else. But they need help from the cops because they need information, where the other satanic cults are. And the police are tight-lipped. They're like, well, what do you want? What do you want? It is well known that in order to expand on their psychical research, that Lorraine Warren devoted a lot of hours, just like a good friend of mine, Wendy Nugent, devoted to helping missing persons, missing children's bodies that, could not be found, because she would grab something that the person had and she would literally step into whatever the Holy Spirit would give her to help them find that person. This is what the Warrens did at the police station. They said, we can help you, but we need your help. So the Warrens go with the police in order to get information about their cursed totem to a site where Lorraine has a vision. She puts her hand down and sees the murdered girl, helps the police retrieve the body from the water. And Lorraine has a second vision of this satanic ritual table that's being used that is basically Yes, Wendy was very, very successful. She was one of my best friends. Wendy was a very devout Christian, and um, she basically always gave credit to God. She never, and that's another thing too. You're going to find that some people claim that they can do this and they can do that. Well, they can't do anything without the Holy Spirit. And if somebody is not giving credit to God, well, I'm sorry, but probably the information didn't come from God. That's just my personal experience. So, what you're looking at is what Lorraine was seeing. She was seeing a ritual table. She was seeing something was going on. She was seeing the person cursing Arnie. When the person was found, the missing person was found in the lake, the police gave them the priest that would help them find missing persons, that was really heavily studying the occult, and he lived out all by himself. So the Warrens went out to meet him. I'm so glad you could join us, Nina. Now, the Warrens didn't know this priest. They had no clue who he was. And the researcher had given them a book with this totem in it. So let's cover that kind of demonic stuff that can happen with the whole visionary stuff, and the demons coming out of the waterbed. I didn't even touch that yet or anything else like that. And the satanic totem, we did cover that. When the demonic is involved, can Arnie see something crawling underneath the bed that looks like a living body coming at him? That's demonic, and yes. And you don't have to be possessed to actually see, hear, or smell something like that. The vision that Lorraine was getting from this satanic totem and picking it up, that's very demonic. And yes, that can happen. And no, you don't have to be a mystic to actually touch something so evil and not your soul not reverberate inside and just be repulsed so badly. Occult books, don't pick them up, don't read them, don't look at them, that sort of thing. This priest was heavily into researching the occult. He basically knew that that was his life's work, to help people get out of cults. No, Edgar, the shadow people are totally different. And shadow people are, for lack of a better term, shadows are lower level demons usually, because the higher level demons don't need to, do that in daylight or at night. They really don't. They have a lot of other ways to scare people. This priest tells them that they need to look for a specific kind of ritual magic. Ed and Lorraine go back to the priest. They look at the body because Lorraine wants to see if this body was cursed by this satanic cult, then this body can be touched. And she may be able to draw an image of where this satanic cult is. They go to the morgue. Lorraine touches it. She's just absolutely just thrown back. And she calls the prison and she says, you need to get Father in there. The priest needs to get there. Arnie's in trouble. She's coming from him. She saw this woman going to her altar and putting stuff in a cup to get him completely cursed. Yes, in both. I have seen both. There have been cover-ups, legal cover-ups, and there have been priests, or not priests, but there have been police that have lost their lives. Their family members have died. Their family members have been poisoned for getting involved in satanic cult murders. And there's a lot of blackness out there on both ends. In this instance, where we have Lorraine seeing this satanic witch cursing Arnie, we have the priest going to see Arnie. He's in solitary. And he hands him like this little bottle of holy water, okay? Right through the chute, it's glass. Why would you give somebody like that glass? Arnie, which is really kind of crazy, pours holy water in a circle and he just kind of huddles. But the witch can get to him anyway. So the witch has him break that glass and he goes to cut his neck. Lorraine, having the vision with the dead body, steps in and she starts praying, carrying his dead meat. Dead, stinky, old, rotten meat. Just answering questions from the chat. So you have a bunch of different things going on. You have visions. You have a satanic ritual occurring that is affecting another person, that is tied to another person, cursing another person. Can that really happen? Yes, it can. Arnie didn't have any natural protection at the time. He was not, he had opened himself up to it. He had allowed himself, for the sake of his love for Debbie, to be cursed by this entity, this demon. That can happen. The visions can happen. Lorraine's ability to be seen by this witch and to see into what she was doing can definitely happen. The crossover of creating an opportunity for suicide is more of a demonic mental delusion than and it can be a spiritual attack too with the possession. It can be both, all right? So after this occurs, Lorraine prays to get Arnie to stop cutting his neck. Debbie and the priest get Arnie strapped to a bed and he seems to be okay. The Warrens are attempting to tie this totem together, so they go back to the original priest that had the occult and the occult books that had been studying it. Yes, he was baptized. Arnie was baptized. What we're looking at is we're looking at the Warrens walking in to a priest's house that is waiting in this huge library of all these occult books. And this is where it starts getting really bad. We have a lot of occult ritual pieces there. And the priests, seeing the Warrens, shoves a book at them that they open. And the priest tells them that he got a woman pregnant 20 years ago. The mother died in childbirth. Since he was the father, he decided to leave the priesthood and come and continue his research. Nobody saw the little girl. She was raised in that library of occult, ritual magic, Satanism, spell casting, binding, the grimoire. Everything was there at her disposal to play with. He tells the Warrens, this is your witch. You will have to find the altar and you will have to stop it because that's the only way to break the curse. It's a curse of 3. It is love, suicide, and murder that is going to get the witch greater power. I'm going to stop myself right there because I have to cover some stuff for people. Now, one, you have an occult library and an occult museum that a priest is holding on to privately. To my knowledge, I know a good deal of priests that have small libraries, but the extent of his library, I don't know a local ordinary, even an ordinary in Italy, that would allow for that much evil information to be located in one place. That's just not how things are done. At least not in the Catholic Church anyway. And if it is, it would be an occult practicing priest, which, as we know, Christ's church may be perfect. However, the people, you and I, and the priests included that serve in, are not perfect. Churches are hospitals for great sinners, not for perfect people. We're here to be perfected. not to actually be perfect. So that is not true. That is not possible. Also, for a priest to raise a child under the radar and nobody even know it, that would be very difficult to pull off. Not completely. Sorry, I had to have some green tea. Not completely. It is possible. I think it would be much more possible maybe 200-300 years ago than it is now, because now there is so much more there's so many features of modern life that it would be hard. What he would have had to lie that this was a niece that he was raising, and then to have it exposed to all that occult, that would be incredibly horrible. Nobody would want it, and it just wouldn't be good. So we're looking at a couple of things that just, for Hollywood, for this movie, it's just not possible. It makes great stories though. And this little girl growing up in this horror house with her father studying this stuff, he tells the Warrens that the land he's on was an underground railroad. All right, for those of you that aren't familiar with the Underground Railroad, from the South, the slaves were trucked through various houses and all sorts of labyrinths and tunnels so they could get them to the Canada border so they can get them free. And that's what we're looking at here, was a priest that had property, and it was probably, we don't know how many slaves died underneath there, under the tunnels. We don't know the cruelty that occurred there, but we know this little girl had a playground for summoning, conjuring, and doing her own thing. So we have the curse now. The Warrens have the curse. They have the woman. They actually have her in their sights. Lorraine touches the book and sees the tunnels down below. So they rush outside to get to the tunnels because they have to break it so that Arnie can live. The priest looks at the Warrens and tells them, if you destroy her altar, you could lose everything you love, everything you have. And is this boy worth that? Meaning Arnie. And I will tell you that what he is saying is absolutely true. In order to bring a master Satanist, a satanic practitioner of any ranking that has any bit of, I'm not going to say power, because I will never, ever, ever give Satan power. God gave Satan power. I didn't. I do believe that he is bound and limited by God's laws, by the limits and terms that have been set forth, and he cannot bother you or I. So I'm just going to honestly and openly say that the people that are adept in black magic and conjuring, they don't get out alive. They don't get out and start preaching to people that I am a born-again Satanist and I'm a Christian and I killed all these babies and I did this and I did that and I killed all these people and I had millions. No. If you ever hear of or meet someone that says that they were a high satanic practitioner, I would probably, I'm not a betting person, but from my experience, they don't get out alive. Period. And they know it. There's only one way for them to go, and that is to appease the demons above them. So when the priest was warning Ed and Lorraine that if you interfere in this curse, if their faith wasn't in place, if their prayers weren't in place, if they were not ready to handle the retribution on their lives, their family, their finances, it could be really bad for a lot of months until they removed what I call the residual demons coming after them. It could be very bad. That part is very, very true. So Thank you so much, Nina. Thank you, guys. Yes, we all have to remember that, you know what? We already know the story. We already know where he's going. This time is only like this. We have nothing to worry about. The Warrens carry on. They're downing these tunnels. They're looking. And all of a sudden, Lorraine steps into her vision and sees this witch slice the priest's throat. She kills her own father. That's patricide. That's not going to really get her a lot of power. Anybody can kill a parent. That's not exactly great. So the witch starts coming after the Warrens. Meanwhile, while this witch is coming after the Warrens, the camera goes to Arnie, who is in the jail. Arnie's in the jail, and he is dislocating. He is frothing. He is foaming. He is having such great difficulty with, he's not capable of talking to anyone. Debbie is so worried about him. Debbie is screaming, Arnie, Arnie, Arnie. The priest is praying deliverance prayers, and Arnie is just not, he can't even understand what's going on, because he is in the grips of this demon, and the demon wants him dead. So as the priest is praying over him, as Arnie is dislocated and bilocated, he is being used as a puppet. He is going to die, period. It's just all there is to it. And they show this priest praying prayers over him, and like I said, they flash back to Ed and Lorraine in the tunnels. Lorraine and Ed find each other in the tunnels, and they find the altar, and they turn around and they face the witch. And the witch says, "You're not going to stop me." Ed and Lorraine hold on to each other, because Lorraine was pursued by Ed for a few minutes, and Ed was going to kill her. Does this happen in possession cases? It can. In possession cases where you have lay ministers involved with a very, very bad case, people can turn on each other. I haven't heard of anybody wanting to murder anyone yet, but they can be snap mad, violent, and then just not know why they got in such a bad mood. But the lower level demons, depending, can step in and really, really, really alter attitudes and just feelings, and make things seems like they're just not really happening. So that is very, very, very possible. That part is true. There's a question. Thanks for joining us, Sean. But you can always go back and listen to the beginning, everybody, please. You know, it's not that big of a deal. I know it's a long-winded show, but hey, there's a lot of information to parse out here on whether it's true or not. So what's difficult is understanding some of the realms and the levels of the demonic and how they operate. And you know what, shadow people, what you got to remember about things that make shadows on walls, these are the lower level demonic. And this is why I tell each and every one, and I'm going to tell everybody right now, give me a like, give me a thumbs up, share this video if you're getting anything out of it. Shadow people are nothing more than the images in your head. This is why I tell you do not put anything in your head that the devil can and will use against you. Because anything you've ever watched, he can twist and turn and use that to creep you, to frighten you, to make your night a living hell. Don't put something in your mind that you've got to beg your guardian angel to scrub out. Shadow people are the same. They don't really exist. They're just lower level demons. They'll make it look like whatever you think is a freaky frayed thing, because they can. All right? Because that's what they're good at. Bernard, Bruno, it's good to see you. So we're keeping going. Yes, Diane. Ed and Lorraine facing the witch. They're telling her, you can't have Ed and you can't have me. And Ed snaps out of it. He's no longer trying to throttle Lorraine. And he holds her and he says, you can't cross this. And then the witch it's kind of interesting how they did this, because this woman that was, the occultist Satanist person, she's standing there dropping her head, and you can see her whole body that she is calling on evil to do what it just did to Ed. Satan knows his limits. He knows our free will. When we say no, he can't cross that. When you say, get back, I don't have time for you, I got Jesus here, okay? No time for you. When you say no, he cannot cross. He cannot come. So, who did Satan have the power over? The witch. The interesting thing about the story here was that the witch was, cracked, taken, bent, dragged to hell. And Ed and Lorraine are just, they're collapsed, they're happy, they're like, oh, thank God. What was interesting is that Ed made the statement in the movie, well, Satan was taking a soul back to hell, and it's not going to be one of us. This is part of the, shall we say, this is part of the problem with false information, that sometimes people think, oh, well, Ed and Lorraine, Lorraine was Catholic, and, I got to watch this movie, and I got to see how she does this. Hollywood does not portray the truth here, okay? There is nothing that says Satan has to drag a soul back to hell. There is nothing that says, I'm going to become a satanic priestess and I got to drag a soul back every single day. Satan has the goal. Okay? Chaos, divide, destroy, destruct. Satan's primary game is for you to give up your free will and say yes to his game, so he can create the hell in you so you don't choose God. That's his game. You don't get dragged to hell. He will never own your soul, period. Do I have to say that again? He will never own your soul. I don't care if you signed your name in blood 5 times. I don't care if you've given your soul to Satan 20 times. He ain't owning your soul. Doesn't matter. God owns your soul. And when you cross over and you hang out with Christ, and Christ looks at you and goes, oh God, you made it. And Satan's like, oh, he's mine. Jesus is going to look you in the face and say, okay, buddy, your choice. You're going with them, you're going with us. You will always have free will. Never forget that. She chose the dark side. And that's how people end up in hell. They choose to go there. Never forget it. Let's tie this movie up, folks. No, and you know what? Hollywood doesn't really portray anything in its actual, how it happens. So this woman's dead. Arnie is freed of this, what should we call it? This step in possession. And basically what happens is Arnie is going to be in front of a jury. All right. Arnie has to go to a court that they're going to present the whole, exactly, Jesus, I trust in you. Amen. Hallelujah. And I'm going to tell you that right now, every single person that's watching this, if you ever are confronted with anything ugly or evil, and it's talking to you, and you say, proclaim that God was born of man, get down on your knees and worship the one true living God, Jesus Christ. If they do that, they're from God. If they don't, rebuke it and ignore it. Always rebuke it. Get it away from you. Arnie's free. He goes into jail. He serves his time. He basically gets, 20 years. And he serves 5 years. Him and Debbie get married in prison. And they lived literally in love together. And they fought every day to keep this information out there. And what is that information? That yes, the devil is real. Yes, you have the power to rebuke him. Yes, you have the power to say no. And this Hollywood movie, great movie that it is, of entertainment, I don't recommend you go see it. It's not worth being curious about. It loosely covers Arnie's life and what he struggled with. And he got out of jail after serving, 5 years, and went on. He is one of the most wonderful, loving, loyal, steadfast, honest, hardworking, goal-oriented people you would never ever know that this had ever happened to him. That's how much he loves God. That's how much he loves God. It's just so absolutely amazing. Exactly. Send it all to the foot of the cross, because you know what? It's not worth it. But they had a love that will never die. And this show and the next show that I do will be in loving memory of Deborah Johnson Glatzel, my bestie, my sister. And I gotta stop there, because I really miss her, and I miss Ken, you guys, a lot. And I love you all for being here. And it's just so strange having to do shows without those two big mouths, you guys. But God bless you. God keep you. And as always, okay, Farrah's here with Swords of St. Michael to do what? To help you win the fight. Let's win it right. And thank you all for coming. Thank you for enjoying this series. Like I said, please give me a thumbs up, because I really need to get this information out. And Arnie is just as dedicated. Thank you, Rosalie. I love you too. I love you all. Don't forget, please, let's pray for those who hate us. Pray for those who say bad things of us. Pray for those who can't understand that there is a God that loves them. God bless you all. Good night. And guess what? I'll see you again in 2 weeks with another fabulous either movie review or Can Demons Do That? Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Bye. It's time to put on my goodbye music. It's time to turn the music off. Good night. Thank you, Sean. Thank you all. Thank you, Edgar, Billy, Anne, Rosalie, Athena, Scott, Melissa, and Diane. God bless.